How Gender and Income Affect Happiness Around the World by James, Tyler, Taylor, Jessica, Luis, and Sam. Can money buy happiness, and can income affect your happiness? So can money actually buy happiness? According to Richard Easterlin, the answer is no. He collected data in 1995 about how happy people are and compared it to data taken in 1974. He found that although the U.S. had become much richer, no one was happier. The physical things money can get you only brings temporary happiness. This is supported by research done by Sonja Lombrowski of the University of California, who says that typically material things are only fulfilling once we get them. An example of this would be a pair of new shoes or a video game. These are only keep you happy for so long, and the excitement will eventually wear out. So now that we know that money can't buy happiness, can your income affect your happiness? The answer to this is yes. Studies done in 2008, one by Angus Deaton and the other done by Betsy Stevenson and Justin Wolfers, showed that people who have higher incomes tend to be happier than people who have smaller incomes. They also found that richer countries tend to be happier than countries who are struggling. Countries in Latin America were the only exception to this. They found that although Latin American countries were poorer, their populations were happier than countries who were comparable to them. Latin American countries were their only outlier in their studies. So how strong is the relationship between income and happiness? A majority of people are happy. Income does make a difference, but the thing that makes the biggest difference is the way you spend your money. The best way to spend your money to make you happy is to either donate it or use it to experience things. Examples would be to go on vacations, hiring a babysitter so you can go out, or hiring a maid, which would allow you to do what you want with your free time. Overall, everybody is happy regardless of how much they make. According to Andrew Blackman, the reason people who make more than $500,000 a year are happier than people who make less than $10,000 a year is because they're able to give it to organizations or they're able to use it for experiences. Multiple other studies done by researchers at Purdue and Princeton support the findings above. They also found that the ideal salary for happy people ranges from $60,000 to $75,000 a year. So how should you spend your money to increase happiness? Like we just talked about, the best way to spend your money to increase happiness is to either donate it or spend it on experiences like vacations or concerts. However, this can depend a bit on your social class. If you're in the lower class, a better option would be a new TV. In some studies done by Deborah Hall of Arizona State University, it showed that people in the lower class found greater amounts of happiness in purchases like a new TV versus something like a new pair of shoes. The reason for this is because the new TV allows them to better experience things like a sporting event or maybe even a concert. So in a sense, they now have a better experience, which increase their overall happiness while also being able to work within their budget.
In this section, we're going to be reviewing who is happier overall, whether it be men or whether it be women. Based on 3 studies that were conducted in 2003 by the Pew Research Center, 2006 by the University of Pennsylvania, and 2013 by the Brookings Institute, the answer in all 3 is actually women. They do clock in with a higher happiness percentage than men. Based on the 2013 study by the Brookings Institute, it also did report that compared to their male counterparts, women do report higher levels of stress than men. Based on that same study, and with the information from the study from the Pew Research Center, it does show that women are more worried and preoccupied with stressors at home, such as family life with their kids, spouses, and others. Shown is the information that was gathered from the 2003 study by the Pew Research Center on happiness between male and female participants. In the graph, we are seeing the 21 nations with the highest divide of happiness in men versus happiness in women. Again, you can see here that the nations very much differ from Eastern to Western societies, higher income to lower income nations, but overall the results do show the same, that overall women do have a higher level of happiness opposed to men. As mentioned before, that does include the fact that they do face higher stress levels on a daily basis compared to men. The information still holds true. Shown is some data from the University of Pennsylvania that was gathered based on longitudinal information on the overall happiness in comparison to from men to women. Here we do see that overall women do report higher levels of happiness throughout the 40-year period from the 1970s till the year 2010. There is a few sections where men do overtake it, but for the most part it is just women. Continuing from the information we did see on our last slide, from the information gathered from the University of Pennsylvania based on their longitudinal information that was provided, we do see that overall in the United States, again, it is a trend that women do trend higher in happiness levels than men do. But some interesting things to note: as a nation, we did have our highest levels of happiness in the 1970s and lowest levels of happiness in the 1990s, which actually coincide with two things. The highest levels of happiness actually is one of the periods in time where we had the highest inflation and some of the highest unemployment in the nation. The 1990s is opposite, where we had some of the lowest unemployment and lowest inflation. So it is quite interesting to see that the happiness levels not necessarily are connected with wealth levels. Another thing to make note of, again, overall, women do have a higher happiness level than men as a trend, but there was 5 points where that was not the case in the last 40 years. Some additional information of interest based on the 2013 study from the Brookings Institute. These numbers in the difference between happiness in men and women do hold true for most nations, except those with a greater gender inequality based on laws and other factors. The same study from the Brookings Institute did mention that regardless of gender or country, men and women do see declining happiness levels around middle age. Some additional information from the 2003 Pew Research study that we do see, as mentioned prior, women do have higher daily levels of stress when it comes to their daily lives, even though they are overall happier in most nations. That is attributed to home life. But if we dive a little deeper, we do see that is in part to the fact they have a overall bleaker outlook for the future than that of their spouses for their families, where women don't believe the kids will be able to get into good schools, get a proper education, and be able to provide for themselves. Men do have the opposite outlook. They do believe that it is going to be easier than the wife thinks for their kids' future. But that's not to say men do not have their own stressors. Men are more often than not concerned with their country going to all-out war.
Happiness in the United States. The United States Happiness Index. Currently, the U.S. ranks 16th in happiness out of 146 countries. Previously, we were ranked 19th, but in the newest reports, the U.S. moved up, passing up countries like the U.K., Belgium, and France. Since 2020 and the start of the pandemic, levels of volunteering, helping strangers, and donating have all gone up in the U.S., which are all things that are proven to create more happiness for the people that take part in them. The United States is overall relatively happy despite the ongoing pandemic and other global issues that are occurring. Why is the U.S. happier than others? For starters, the United States has significantly higher income levels than most countries, which, as discussed earlier, can be a factor in happiness. Also, in the U.S., we do not have war within our borders, and we are pretty well protected compared to many countries in the world. Crime rates and unemployment are also low, which impacts our feeling of comfort and therefore our happiness as well. Are men or women happier in the U.S.? Women around the world have historically been happier than men, and that fact remains when it comes to the United States. In the US, we are fortunate enough to have more gender equality than a lot of other countries, which helps contribute to women's happiness. Women in the US are also more satisfied with their lives in comparison to men. Income effect on happiness in the US. The United States income levels are higher than both South Korea and Afghanistan. So, overall happiness in the US is higher due to the effect that income can have on one's happiness. However, income effect on happiness only goes up to a certain point. Research has shown that after around $75,000, happiness levels remain stable across the rest of the board.
So we'll be looking at the happiness in South Korea. The happiness index in South Korea is relatively low. According to data given in 2022 by World Population Review, South Korea is ranked number 61 out of happiest countries in the world with a population of 51,329,899 residents. Compared to the United States, South Korea's happiness index is substantially lower. Ironically, South Korea is among some of the most unhappiest countries despite its technological advancements and 10th largest economy in the world. South Korea's low quality of life, could it be linked to income? South Korea is notorious for its hardworking culture and adults who will work longer hours on average than those in America. This is primarily because of the Korean industrial system, for which they owe their major economic growth to. While their GDP per capita is high, GDP per hour is crucially low. This pretty much means that they will achieve the same income by working more hours compared to America, and as well as most countries of the world. It only makes sense that their unhappiness could be related to their considerable effort for the same earnings. As well, South Korea is fairly high to live there. Things are very expensive. Is the average Korean woman really happier than the average Korean man in South Korea? There is a simple answer to this, and misogyny is very prevalent. Misogyny can be described as feeling, showing, or categorized by hatred of a prejudice against women. Despite South Korea's massive advancements, gender inequality is still very prevalent in modern time and consistently ranks highest in the world each year. This is most likely related to its deep roots in Confucianism, a philosophy that emphasizes the importance of social hierarchy in order to create a balanced society. With the help of the OECD, the gap of inequality is narrowing. In addition, South Korea is known for its worldwide strict and unrealistic beauty standards. It's also known as the capital of plastic surgery. A study done in 2009 found that Korean women are very critical of their body image, leading to lower self-esteem and self-satisfaction compared to American women. The depression is also very high in their youth, and so is their suicidal rates. In conclusion, stress dominates almost every aspect of life in South Korea. Culture in general puts massive pressure on its youth, creating a low happiness index overall in the long run.
This is the happiness in Turkey based on the current index. For 2022, Turkey is currently ranked 102 with a happiness index of 4.95. This means they're just under the halfway mark of the 146 countries that were ranked on the scale. What factors cause them to have such a low score? Well, based on research, the main cause of low happiness level in the country is their political leadership. Their leader tends to lean towards an authoritarian style of leadership, causing social turmoil and high inflation rates in the country. It is stated that females are over 10% more happy than males in the country, and this could also be possibly due to marriage having more social status and benefits for females as opposed to males. As we look at happiness in Afghanistan, they are ranked all the way at the bottom with just a scale of 2.5, which makes them the world's most unhappiest country. Even before the Taliban insurrection in the country and all of the terrorist groups causing turmoil, the country still scored very low. Nearly half of all women surveyed would choose to migrate out of Afghanistan, as opposed to just over a third of men. When looking at the data, it becomes very clear that the region does not adhere well to gender inequality. Literacy rates for women are just under 30%, with education rates in the country being composed of a 60% male population. This becomes even more apparent when looking at women in positions of power, where women compose just 4% of senior and managerial positions in the country, and only hold a 27% share in parliament. It becomes apparent that the reasons behind the want for migration for women are justified, and that the data that supports them being more happy than their male counterparts in the country are surprising.